has Dawn done India in? Can India out-Trump Trump? Is India trapped? Caught between Trump's tariff tirade, the Russian bear, and the Chinese dragon. Caught between strategic autonomy and strategic alignment. Is this an impasse? Hello, everyone. I'm Neena Gopal. Welcome to Global Express, our weekly deep dive into events that have a direct impact on India. Do click on the new Indian Express website and subscribe to Global Express. This week, these are the questions that defy answers as US President Donald Trump targets India, imposing an across-the-board 25% tariff on all Indian origin goods and an additional 25% penalty to make it 50%, effective August 28th. What are the options before India? How do we deal with Trump? Do we look at other markets for our goods? What's on the cards on oil supplies, on forging new strategic alliances, on lessening our dependence on Washington, on economic diversification, on economic growth? Why has India taken this tough line, and what happens to critical sectors like pharma, energy, and electronics? Why haven't we heard from the Indian Americans? I mean, barring Nikki Haley on this scorched earth tariff policy. On our panel of eminent guests today is the go-to man on tariffs, Mr. Ajay Srivastava is the founder of the Global Trade Research Initiative, a research group that focuses on technology, trade, and climate change and points the government towards development and poverty reduction. He has years of experience in fashioning and crafting India's trade policy, dealing extensively when he was a senior Indian trade officer with WTO, negotiating WTO and FTA. Let's start with you, Mr. Srivastava. I'd like to tackle the issue head on. How long can India stand its ground, hold its nerve on Trump's 50% tariff strike? You've slammed the 25% plus 25% tariffs as hypocritical. You've cited the Chinese purchases, the EU and the US's own purchase of Russian strategic materials, and China and the EU are still not being targeted as India was. Could you tell us why? Why is India facing the heat? Why is India buying Russian oil such a bugbear for Trump? And what stops Washington from targeting Beijing or the European Union? And one last point, Trump's tariffs have affected not just India, but 92 countries all in all. It's upended the world's economies. Who pays the price? Is it the American consumer or every economy in the world?
Thanks, Neena. So we have to understand that the trade war started between US and China during the first term of Mr. Trump. And this time, India is facing much higher tariffs than China is. So why this is happening? So US still wants to target China, but we have all seen how China has stopped the supply of critical materials, rare earth materials, which will stop their defense production, their electronics, high-tech, semiconductors, everything. So US has no other way but to relent and relax. So hurriedly they signed their first deal for 3 months that will be expiring, I think, within a week, and they agreed for 30% tariffs. And in the meantime, they signed many deals with other countries, Europe, Japan, Philippines, Malaysia, Vietnam, and they thought that India was the first to begin the FTA negotiation. They will get India also. India was citing all along that agriculture and dairy is a red line. And my intuitive understanding is that the US knows India very well, and they know it cannot be a decision of any government in India. Whatever shade of the government is there, they cannot do it. Government will fall. US understands this. Our government is very clear about this. That's why they say dairy and agriculture are the red lines. So my sense is that US, hypothetically, if we offer dairy and agriculture, it's not of much use to US. They understand this. Less than 5% of their exports to India are dairy and agriculture. Less than 5%. So India has offered them to eliminate tariffs on rest 95% of the goods. So imagine they say India is a high tariff country, and India says on 95% of your goods, we are willing to make duties zero immediately. I'm not asking anything return from you.
Isn't that a huge concession then?
Yeah, not for the not for the US, because they are eyeing bigger things. So they are eyeing our domestic regulations. They want us to dilute our patent laws, for example, allowing evergreening of the patents, which means delaying the introduction of the generics. They want us to open our government procurement markets. They want the change in our FDI rules so that we allow their e-commerce firms like Walmart or Amazon to sell through their own platforms. Right now, they are not
I
allowed to sell.
see.
So
Oh,
I can list 50 such demands which they have. So they are eyeing bigger things. Over and above, they got the promise of investments from Europe, $750 billion.
that's right.
Japan, $550 billion. And you must have seen one strange clause. Japan will invest, but 90% of the profits will be retained by the US. But nonsense. So they expected all those things, and they thought if EU and Japan have agreed for sacrificing the agriculture, India will also do. But for me, the game is much, much beyond agriculture. Much beyond
Mhm.
agriculture. We have to understand that. And we cannot satisfy US whatever we sacrifice. For example, Trump on 30th July, he says he listed four grouses against India: high tariffs, high non-tariff barriers. Non-tariff barriers is these things. Your patent law is a problem, your FDI problem. These are non-tariff barriers for him. For us, these are respected, useful policy interventions. So high tariffs, high non-tariff barriers, then why I buy oil from Russia, why I buy military from Russia, not from. So you cannot satisfy them. They don't want a partner. They want a vessel. They
A
want,
vassal.
yeah,
Absolutely right.
they want a Pakistan-like entity. You listen to them with folded hands all the time and willing to do whatever they want to do. So I don't think India can ever satisfy that. We are not made that way. And why we should be? We are large economy, so many people to feed. So my sense is that whatever India offers will never be adequate for them.
Bharat Gopalaswamy, based in the Middle East as a consultant. He's an expert on international relations, worked with several think tanks. He was formerly director of the Atlantic Council South Asia Center, senior research scholar at Cornell University, and a researcher in Stockholm's International Peace and Research Institute, SIPRI, the Armed Control and Non-Proliferation Program. Why is Trump so bent on turning India into, as Ajay Srivastava says, a vassal state?
I mean, Trump, um, one cannot really offer an explanation of why is Trump like this, because Trump is his own entity. What he says today, 3 months later, whatever he says is, is all forgotten, and he will completely deny. Even 72 hours later, he'll completely deny that he ever said something along these lines and all that stuff. I think the bigger point is actually, this, as we know, 100 years of good governance of the world is lost. As we know,
Mhm.
America is fast losing friends, partners, allies. Everybody will try to while this time away for the next 4 years. But about the bigger point is the American credibility, as it once stood, is eroded and is being eroded by the second and the minute. And you cannot bully a country like India, or wanting to even think of bullying. I mean, you may bully the EU, you may bully Japan, but as such, this is plain front bullying. As somebody wrote it in the New Yorker, we in America, we are living, we ourselves are living under some kind of a foreign occupation, because this is by
This is
far.
not the America that you're used to or expect.
Yeah, no, and nobody, this is certainly no way to govern, even if it even comes in the remote governance framework. What I'm surprised is what nobody is talking about is, um, America has had I think in 2023, if the figures are correct, America has had a surplus in services in 2023. Advanced economies don't necessarily make surpluses in manufacturing; they make surpluses in services. For example, the American legal, a legal opinion from an American branded law firm goes much farther than a Chinese branded law firm. How many Indian companies would have sought a legal opinion from an American branded law firm for which these services for which the Indians have engaged have never rejected that?
So
You may walk. Sorry.
more than that, Mr. Gopal Swami, does the ordinary American back Trump on these moves? I mean, does the political class, I mean, India had a bipartisan support, both from the Republicans and the Democrats, Has that changed? And,
I, mean, I live in the Midwest. Okay, 25 miles, I drive somewhere 25 miles out of city limits, Chicago, and I go and I ask somebody, what do you think of these tariffs? Most of these people would be clueless about what's happening in Washington, D.C. Okay, they might, for them, I think where the rubber hits the road is when we go to a Walmart and Home Depot and the Patel brothers to buy some groceries. And when it hits you that it's a 25% more that your grocery bills are paying, it won't, and the projections are the lowest economic class will pay the most amount of price, because for the medium and the higher economic class, whether you pay $4.25 or $4.75, in the immediate term, you're not going to see these ripple effects. And the stock market, the stock market is being manipulated, and that's the least amount of indicator for you to look at in strategic terms. 25 years from now, what kind of world are you going to live in is the bigger question to ask.
That's true. That's true. Mr. S. Raghotham, journalist and strategic analyst, and a prolific writer, is associated with online media and think tanks, long-term observer of India-US relations. He worked with the Institute for Defense and Studies Analysis during the Indo-US nuclear deal. He was also an IVLP fellow of the US State Department on the India-US Space Cooperation. Currently, he's a director Straddling Consulting. Why is it that Trump has made such an issue of this India buying Russian oil? Wasn't it the Americans? I mean, Eric Garcetti, the U.S. ambassador at that time, who sort of nudged India into going and buying Russian oil, because until then, our major suppliers for oil were the Gulf countries, was OPEC, with Saudi Arabia and the UAE. What do you have to say? I mean, then what happens to this whole concept of India as this strategic partner, which is what Marco Rubio is calling India, and it almost looks as if in India and America are sort of, there's a huge widening gulf now between the two countries. We've got now our national security advisor Ajit Doval visiting Moscow. You have S. Jaishankar, the foreign minister, visiting Moscow. What is going to happen? I mean, are we going to get closer to Moscow? Are we going to continue to buy Russian oil? Or are we going to sort of pander to America and buy a bit of US oil? Do they have the reserves to even offer it, to sell it?
Thanks, Neena, for having me on the panel alongside Mr. Srivastava and Mr. Gopalaswamy. This last bit that you raised, whether we are going to, sort of the rift is going to widen, is something that probably is the worrisome part of all this. I agree with Mr. Srivastava on the trade part, and I agree with Mr. Gopalaswamy as well. But this is, let me start with the proposition that India continuing to buy Russian oil wouldn't have been much of a problem for Trump if Vladimir Putin had shown some sincerity in moving towards an end to the war. Now, that has become a very urgent proposition for Donald Trump. One of the reasons is that Trump and the MAGA base see this as Joe Biden's war, not their war, right? And this is, this man has to be seen as a man of peace. There is a Nobel Prize waiting for him, right? So that is an urgent personal thing for him. There is also a strategic reason behind, wanting to end the war quickly, which is why, if you see, as soon as the European Union struck a deal with Trump, I think towards the end of July, I think July 31st or so, that was when Trump shortened the deadline for Putin to end the war from 50 days. He brought it down to 8 to 10 days or 15 days or whatever, came to his mind at that point of time. The reason is that if the war keeps going for several more months, it is quite possible that the US war machinery itself may not be able to produce the kind of requirements that Ukraine has.
That's very interesting.
In addition to what the US military requires, right? US military preparedness is itself at a low level, historically speaking. So if you add the Ukrainian requirements, now Trump has struck a deal with the Europeans to say, I'll supply the arms, you pay for it, right? But if this war goes on for too long from now on, it might be that the US may not be able to serve Ukraine's requirements while also meeting American military requirements. That's a dangerous situation to be in terms of what happens if China suddenly makes a move on Taiwan at this point of time. Or even in 2027, when the American military is expecting China to make a move on Taiwan, right? That's close by for them in terms of military production. So those are issues.
It is not India's relationship with Russia that is the bugbear.
It wouldn't be. If Putin, there is talk of a Putin-Trump meeting now. If Putin were to put a time frame and say, okay, I'm going to wind up this war towards this time or something like that, or make any sort of gesture towards bringing down hostilities, right? I think this issue will go away to a certain extent. It might still crop up in the trade negotiations as a bargaining chip. But it won't be this, holding India's throat and saying, you have to stop today, you have to stop, in 24 hours.
So basically what you're saying, that all three of you are saying is that we don't expect India to backpedal, on the Russia deal, that it will continue. And that what is Doval doing then in Moscow? Is he trying to sort of assure the Russians that India will not back off and stop buying Russian oil? I mean, it doesn't benefit India either.
The Russian oil is not so much an issue, even from India's point of view. The gap in price from 2022 to now has fallen from about $30 in the open market to the Russian offer to about $2 to $3 at this point of time, or maybe $5 max, right? So the gap is not much. So we are not going to lose economically by not buying Russian oil. We can still go back to the old suppliers if that oil is available, or you can buy from the US, which will make Donald Trump very happy, right? The Europeans have said we'll buy $750 billion of oil from you. If we say $50 billion, Trump is going to be happy about that. So the Russian oil as such I don't think it's such a big deal for India also. It is not something that is a vital national interest at this point of time. You can get oil from other sites. So I think Trump is going to make this a case because he is desperate to stop this war for these reasons, and he can't get China to back off, right? So he's going to get India to back off, and he's going to make this a test case for whether India is a friend or a foe.
And that's quite a comment.
Yeah.
So Ajay Srivastava, do you agree with this? Do you think India is going to offer to buy American oil and gas as a panacea, as a pander to Trump? I mean, Japan has pandered, the EU has pandered.
We are already buying US oil and gas. And that has gone up. That has gone up substantially in 2024. In fact, in 2025 as well. 2025 as well. Yeah.
Mr. Srivastava, if you could comment.
Yeah. So I agree with Raghotham. India has increased its buying from the US. And yesterday I saw one Reuters story which says that India reportedly agreed to buy $25 billion worth of oil and gas from US. This is Reuters story. Yesterday's story. No confirmation from official side. They will not come. So but my worry is very different. So first is I wanted to understand why this oil business US doesn't have much oil. Why they are forcing everybody to buy US oil. US even for its own consumption it buys 30%. It imports 30% of its own needs. It can't produce enough. Number one. So how is they got a $700 billion worth of energy commitment from European Union? How they are going to supply to all those Japan, European Union, India, and other? They don't have oil. They don't have oil. Then it occurred to me maybe oil is not the issue. Oil trade, if you are buying oil from US, it will be always denominated in dollar. So basically, it's trying to arrest the fall or de-dollarization in some way possible, in the largest way possible. That's one thing. But from where he is going to get oil? So I don't know. There is no answer to this. But one thing is sure, he'll be buying oil from the open market and supplying to other countries. So US will be just a broker. And who knows, tomorrow things change and he and Putin again become friends and he starts selling Russian oil. I will not be surprised the way we have been reading Trump all along. So oil business is basically to arrest de-dollarization. US is very scared on this. US doesn't have oil, so they will be acting middleman between two countries, supplier and buyer, and taking their commissions in dollars. That's it. And I will not be surprised if they buy from Russia and supply to India.
That's a very interesting point,
Uh,
Mr. Srivastava.
Sorry, Neena, can I just come in there?
Yeah, sure.
I sort of disagree with Mr. Srivastava to a certain extent. US does have oil and US has LNG, right? So that's, in fact, US is one of the biggest energy producers at this point of time. If you look at the Europe deal, it's energy, US energy. So that includes oil, LNG, nuclear, and whatever else that the US wants to sell. So that's the sort of deal that there is. And the reason US might not be producing oil at its peak capacity is because of all the restrictions, environmental restrictions and other regulations that previous administrations have made. And one of the things that Trump wants to do is to open up all of that. And say, that's why, the drill, baby, drill slogan, right? So he wants to open up. US has reserves. US has much bigger reserves than most other countries in the world. So that he wants to bring it all online and start selling.
Thanks,
Well,
Raghutham. Can I come in? Yes.
yeah, please.
I base my observation on a simple fact that the US annual consumption is about $580 billion, and they import about 150 or something $1 billion worth of oil from other countries. And I agree they have fields, but there is also a picture that most of their fields they're using fracking technology.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that okay, so their oil environment and all those things are there, the restrictions are there, but their oil fields they have been already used, and they are using fracking to overflog them to get the oil. I think I need to understand this better. I just focused on that the fact they import crude also to meet their domestic needs.
Okay. If I can bring you in, Mr. Gopalaswamy, I was quite intrigued by the comments that I was reading about how Trump was basically using this negotiating tactic to sort of give a message to India that it's a middle power, which is aspiring to be a big power, and it's being shown its place, being told that it has to buckle or face the heat. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, the other point basically is that these agri and dairy products are not really India user friendly because most of these are cattle fed, and they will affect, and so are the genetically modified soybeans and corn. So, is that the reason that India is refusing to concede, on agri and dairy?
I mean, it's like make whatever I think sometimes we give too much credence to Trump, like saying that he's thought through some of these things, and as I've repeatedly said, some of these things, it just, I don't think the White House currently is not the White House of the Bidens or the Obamas or somebody else, where there is a systematic policy review, there is a process, and there are people vetting what the president has to say and what the president doesn't have to say, and what comes out as a policy proclamation, as an executive order or something. This White House doesn't have any checks and balances, so to speak. It's a one man. He wakes up today. He thinks if maybe there are 2 or 3 advisors who are whispering into his ears, saying that, India has been doing this, India has been doing that, and maybe he just goes after them, or who knows how, it's anybody's guess how policies made these things today. There was a process, and I suspect that process doesn't exist in this White House. And and for India, as far as India is concerned, I'm sure there are. I'm not a technically qualified expert on agriculture and dairy, but I'm sure there are technical reasons, as you pointed out. The Indian experts, there will, the Indian government, when the state makes a decision, there is a method behind that madness. There must be a technical dimension to it. There is a national interest dimension to it. There is a foreign policy dimension to it. If we give into this, what else should be given? Then there is also, India is a huge agrarian country at the end of the day, and
That's
you
true.
have to protect. You have to, it is not even a prestige issue. It is a national security issue. You have to protect your citizens. That's the responsibility of the state, and that doesn't just. Yeah, go
Yeah,
on.
Mr. Gopalswamy, I just also wanted to ask the fact is that within America, it's also an agrarian economy,
Yes.
and so the same thing applies there as well, I suppose.
Why do you
But
think some of the,
I
why do you
also
think some of
felt,
the most, sorry, why I have to make this point. Why do you think some of the most important caucuses are the Iowa caucuses?
hmm,
Because these are the farmers that are, some of the Midwest America is some of the key constituency for any of these politicians.
that's true. That's true. But do you think India also may have sort of befriended and misread Trump by, Prime Minister Modi was one of the first leaders to arrive there, for a summit in February. This Modi banking on the old, Modi Trump magic to work again. Do you think India showed its hands too early, or
No, I
basically
think
misread Trump?
I'll walk out on a limb on a little bit of speculative grounds out here.
Mhm.
Um, I support my colleague's Raghotham's point. I think one of his national security imperative was to end this war, and if you look at all the comments, what he's making is India is buying Russian oil that's fueling Russia's war machinery. So that ties directly into what Trump is saying. So somebody must have whispered into his ears, why are the Russians fighting? Where are they getting the money from? And somebody must have whispered into his ears saying that, well, the Indians are buying oil. They have been funneling this money all over. And this has been a comment, this has been an irritant in the public discourse for at least 3 years, even during the Biden era. So somebody
Mm.
must have, whispered something into his ears, and he must have just like, oh, really? And then um, backtrack it to the BRICS. He's like, he doesn't like this BRICS framework because he thinks that undermines the dollar. Okay,
That's
so
right.
again, what's the common denominator there? India again. Okay.
Mm.
So he's like, oh my, and he keeps saying this. He keeps saying that Modi and I'm very good friends with Modi and very good friends with the Indian people, but they keep doing all these things. And then there is always this like that India is a tough place to do business. That's existed with the trade negotiators for so many years. And this Trump's urgency is somewhat brought about like, okay, let's all get a trade negotiations together. So all these things aggregated cumulatively has come to his attention, and suddenly today and your neighbors have not done you any favor. Okay, they come and remember there is also a lobby. If there are 50 people working for you, 50 friends of India in Washington, there is also 5 enemies for India in Washington.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
so don't discount that enemy factor. Okay, if it does
Yeah.
not happen for me, it can happen for somebody else. It shouldn't happen for anybody. So don't discount that factor also. So you have your neighbors doing the rounds in the last month, being greeted to a White House lunch and all that stuff. So who knows who,
And he's been invited back for another visit because General Kurillo is retiring.
yeah. So, so that, while however minimal that factor may be, it is still a factor. Okay.
I don't
So,
think it's
and
minimal.
yeah, and all these aggregations can work, right? It's all aggregated. It's not coming. Well, Even if there is no process, there is still a bad process that exists.
That's a very, very good way of putting it. Raghotham, would you agree with that? Do you think that we misread been rushed into this trade negotiation without really understanding what we were getting into?
Agree with Bharat's point, and there is one other dimension to it. The logic of Modi rushing to Washington in February was impeccable. We wanted to go there, get the smoothest and quickest deal possible so that we would be closer to America than China or even Europe in the new, emerging world order sort of thing. So that larger strategic logic was impeccable. Where I think is the problem was the assumption of how they would get there and what would help them get there, right? The assumption was this, sort of, for want of a better thing, I have to say, Hindu right wing, Christian right wing, a white Christian right wing bye sort of idea that exists in the Indian establishment. So they said, okay, this guy is our friend, and he's talking our language on Russia, because at that point of time he was, right. So they thought it would be easy. They did not understand the character of Trump and the nature of the base that he leads. I think that was a problematic thing.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. Mr. Srivastava, if I can bring you in, do you think that the sectors that
Neena, sorry if I can just interject. If
sure.
if our old friend B. Raman were alive, he would have done a total psychological profile of the Trump regime in the second Trump regime, which is very different from the first Trump regime. I did one for my company, Strating, but yeah. So if somebody in the intelligence community had done something like that and probably laid it out on Mr. Modi's table, that would have been useful.
Well, that's very interesting. It's quite funny. Mr. Srivastava, if I could bring you in, I wanted to ask you about the other sectors that have been hit with these tariffs, like gems and jewelry and leather and footwear and shrimp. They're saying that the Andhra state will be very badly affected. Knitted apparel, garment industry. I mean, America is the biggest market for textile and apparel exports, apparently. So, should we be less confrontational on these issues? I mean, or is it beyond negotiation, beyond a settlement? Or should India tackle it by finding new markets for our products?
Finding new markets, I mean, it's a good talk, but it's very difficult. Markets are saturated and big markets are closing. US, we are already watching. Europe will be closing in a big way. They are turning protectionist from January 1 next year. Their carbon levy, carbon border adjustment tax will kick in. So they'll be charging extra tariffs on our steel, aluminum, and many other exports. They'll be adding items. So big markets are closing. And my sense is that if we want to increase our exports, we have to focus on changing the current product profile. Current product profile has a limitation. We cannot reach great heights with this. So that means we have to go back to the drawing board, focus on production, manufacturing, and those basic reforms of capital technology, they have to be undertaken. We have been talking about those things for years, but only paying lip service. These are hard reforms and they have to be there if you want to reach anywhere. Understand this. For me, trade deals are of secondary or even tertiary importance. If you have a great product, say iPhone, it doesn't require a trade deal to be sold in the world. China, even without entering WTO or entering into any FTA, the pre-2000 era, they were already great exporters on the basis of their products. That's so. Instead of talking too much about the trade strategy, I think next few years we should focus on upgrading our product profile. That is, focusing on the manufacturing. Easier said than done, but there is no other way for this. And your first part of your question, whether we should have been less confrontational. So trade deal is about cutting tariffs and relaxation on services, other sectors. So India already agreed to eliminate tariffs on 95% of their exports. They are not going to get satisfied. They want you to buy all all the arms from there, buy oil from there, not buy from here. Sit like this, stand like this. You know, those sit like this, stand like this. These we are going to watch these type of restrictions very soon. It's not end of what Trump is saying. For example, if you recall, in Brazil, when he imposed 50% tariffs, one of the reasons was Brazil issues many instructions to X, that Twitter, for taking down anti-Brazilian contents. Now X says that they receive most requests from India. So we can expect those things again on India. So list of Trump's grouses against any country, if he wants to choose, can be infinitely long. We cannot satisfy. I have been negotiator most of my life, trade negotiator, FTA and WTO. So my sense is that we have to draw our red lines. We should offer maximum flexibility. Whatever we can offer, we should offer everything, but not beyond that. We should offer whatever we can offer and then relax.
But you've also said that that the US earns more from India than India does from the US. You've
Yes.
actually said that.
So he always says that India is a closed market. If it's a closed market, we know for in trade they have a deficit with India about $45 billion. But their companies, they earn $80 to $100 billion more from India. And we say our students, they pay $15 billion worth of tuition, 10 billion in living expenses, 25 billion students alone. They earn a lot. If we do the total, they are in big net surplus.
You've also said that the India's economy can take this kind of a hit, that we should wait it out and see how it goes.
We have to understand we are not Vietnam, where exports are 90% of GDP. Our exports are 20% of the GDP. So exports are important. They don't pull the GDP. If economy grows, exports grow. That's what is our model. That's why we want to retain the restrictions, and our focus is on growing the domestic economy so that we grow the jobs and all those things. If economy grows, the exports will grow. This is not the model only for India. This is the model of China also. China's export GDP is also this. Their exports are higher because the economy is bigger. Even US is this. Their export to GDP is only 11%. US imports more because they don't have to earn. They just print the dollars and import. That's why this trade deficit is there.
Mr. Gopalakwamy, you want to comment on that?
No, I wanted to come in. I think, I think he's making that great point because like the students and stuff. And that's what I'm saying is the services is never accounted for. The US made $1 trillion surplus in terms of services. American law firms, you walk into any mall in Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, the mall itself, the idea of a mall is an American concept.
That's
80%
true.
of the brands inside the mall they may be Indian owned, but the brands are American brands. 60 to 70% are American brands. Okay, and you have a Krispy Kreme, you have a Dunkin' Donuts, and you have a Taco Bell, which are all American brands. So those brand values is the intangible fluff that America earns. There is no way to account for these kinds of stuff. So it's that services, the rest of the world, like he said, contributes. We in America, we just print the dollar. We buy for goods and services for 60 cents, whereas the rest of the world buys that same thing for $1. We buy the rest of the world's because the oil is traded, and that's the de-dollarization aspect my colleague was mentioning. That there is that fear or the threat. Once that de-dollarization, my access to credit in America has been far less. I bought my home for a 3.8% interest rate. Tell me in which part of the world you will have access to cost of credit at that low price. Why is that all? So the rest of the MAGA base and other people do not understand this kind of logic behind all these things. They just think putting up big factories, that's an election promise. Putting up big factories, polluting, increasing factory jobs and labor wages. They think that is the promise that has been sold to many of these folks. And that tariff comes in.
That's interesting, Bharat. But also, should we also address the fact that I've only heard Nikki Haley speak out saying warning against alienating an ally like India. Why is it that the other Indian American politicians' voices have been on silent? I haven't heard anyone saying anything which says that this tariff regime is wrong. So is it because the India-US relationship doesn't seem to be of any value, or
No, I just think it's not. I think it's just that this on many issues, nobody, whether it's a judicial issue, it's a Supreme Court issue, or any issue, for most issues that are contentious, there is no Republican senator or congressman who challenges Trump. The moment he challenges, either he's kicked out of his seat or he loses uh, good graces with Trump, and then you don't see him again. So it's not an India issue. It's anybody in the Republican base today um, is is afraid of challenging him. The only issue, the current domestic political issue that's been rocking, is the Epstein files. But besides that, there has been no issue that can actually splinter the MAGA base. And I think my colleague said the second Trump administration, if you notice, there are the if you were a Republican and if you served in the first Trump administration, you would not find a job in the second Trump administration because you're deemed suspect. They were all the neocons. And the first person that he sent home was Pompeo. He said,
yeah,
"I'm not.
Pompeo.
Thank you for your service. You're not going to get a job again with me." Okay, so this is completely off the charts. The administration that you see is completely. That's why I keep saying it's kind of a foreign occupation.
Okay, that's very
Just
interesting.
just to add
Raghutham, you want to come in?
just to add an interesting point to what Bharat was just saying. I was in the State Department. I was in the State Department as the IVLP fellow on the day Mike Pompeo took over in 2018. And I shook hands, and I was in a kurta pajama, Modi style kurta pajama on that day, kurta churidar on that day. And I was not asked, why are you not wearing a suit? But yeah, but the second Trump administration, that's how the nature of this administration has changed. Why haven't you worn a suit to meet the
Last
president?
Zelensky, yes.
Why haven't you said thank you to Trump for stopping the war, aiding your military or whatever? So that's what you're facing at this point of time. I
I
just
mean,
wanted to add. Sorry,
sorry,
sorry.
I wanted to, I wanted to compliment this for you by like saying, it was a Singaporean president who said, right? I mean, the U.S. is behaving like a rent collector.
Yeah,
And that is true.
once the financialization of the industry sets in, that's what you do. You become a rent collector, basically.
You become, yeah. So
Mr.
and sorry,
Mr.
yeah, go ahead.
Srivastava, I just want to also ask, I mean, there is the criticism of ease of doing business in India, is quite strong. So, I mean, is it time we've signed an FTA with the UK? Should we change our economic policy to allow, open up ourselves to US companies doing business with India? Should they, I mean, apparently a whole load of them already operate in India, but should we offer more attractive terms on ease of doing business, set up a deregulation commission? Is this an opportunity here?
So I am very clear that anyone wants to invest in India through FDI route. Almost all the sectors are open except for some sectors like defense where prior permission is needed. Otherwise, FDI policy is the most liberal in the decades. All we need is to improve that ease of doing business on ground. On ground, we need to take many specific actions. For example, we need to, of course, review our import tariffs. Many of the import tariffs, they no longer serve the needs of the industry. We need to review our many of our quality control orders. They hurt MSMEs badly, many of them, and there is no talk about them. They basically help very large firms, some of them, but mostly they hurt thousands and thousands of small firms. So we need and GST on labor intensive goods, for many labor intensive goods, very high. On rationalization is needed for say fabric. For cotton fabric it's rationalized, but for polyester fabric it's not rationalized. So very specific about 100 such measures are there. If they are taken, then I think it will make a marked difference. Basically, we have to make the ground proper, and then businesses will do the rest of the job. And as far as foreign companies are there, it's wide open. The field is wide open. They can come. All they want is that we have introduced certain restrictions to promote our MSMEs, to protect our MSMEs. For example, we don't allow FDI above 51% for companies like Amazon, so that they still are forced to sell the goods of smaller entities and do not sell their own goods. America feels these are non-tariff measures, but we feel we have to take care of our large population. That's why.
Could you give us a quick comment on why Trump has sort of skirted around China? Is he afraid of China? And does China have a geopolitical tool, which is basically to cut off the products that it sends into India and everywhere else, into America, etc., that America cannot afford to lose out on?
You bet he's scared of China. He increased the tariffs on April to within a week. It crossed 145% average tariff for China, and then China and Japan together they sold U.S. securities over $1 trillion. Immediately he related for 90-day pause was given to the tariff for everybody, and then he negotiated a deal soon with China, bring down tariff from 145% to 30%. Still, they are continuing. Of course, the deal was of 90 days only. They will be reviewing, but 30. So he's scared. Point number one. Point number two is why, when the trade data very clearly says that China is buying more oil from Russia, and he
That's
is not
true.
even naming China. Forget about taking actions on it, because China has demonstrated they will stop the supplies of critical minerals like gallium or rare earth materials, graphites, and all those things that will immediately hit their high tech industries, semiconductors, defense, and all those things. So I think that's the only way Trump understands. You have to apply force or blackmail, and China has been very ably being able to do that. India has not thought in this direction.
Yes. Bharat, if I can come to you, Prime Minister Modi is now heading to the SCO summit at the end of the month, and there's probably going to be a meeting between Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi. But before that, there could even be a meeting between Trump and Putin. So where do you see all this leading? Do you think there is this sort of a realignment happening globally? And where does
No,
India stand in all this?
no, I don't, I wouldn't go that far in terms of a realignment or something. I think this was a huge shock that hit the Indians because they never, I, I don't think they prepared for the day that they would see this version of Trump, especially towards them. Okay. So, you may always keep saying around the corridors, saying that who knows what he will say next, but when it actually happens to you, is when you're really, wow, this really happened. Let's just, where did it go wrong and everything. US is still a very critical and an important country. As far, if Trump was the president of Burundi, nobody would take him seriously. The reason why people take him seriously is because he's the president of the United States. And at the end of the day, the United States minus Trump and the MAGA base has a lot to offer to the rest of the world, as well as also be a partner and a friend to the rest of the world also. So what, as an American institution and an establishment, the government has uh, overall the concerns of many officials, the Indian officials over the years has always been, and officials across the world has always been, the American private sector always wants to do business and wants to have good relations with the rest of the world. Unfortunately, it's the problem. The American government is the problem. Like export controls and global trade management, the American establishment somehow finds a way to come and seep in and create impediments for business. So, having said all those things, yes, you may realign with China, but remember, at the end of the day, you don't trust the Chinese as
Yeah.
much as there is a degree of comfort with the Americans that you still don't have with the Chinese. You've fought a war with the Chinese. There are irritants between the Indians and the Americans, and this is one of the biggest irritants in the last 25 years. And I'm sure you will find a way to reconcile this irritants. It's still the majority of Indians who do well outside India still live in the United States.
That's
It is
very
offered
interesting.
a home. Okay, it's offered a diaspora. There are Indian origin congressmen representing American interests inside American institutions. So that aspect is still there. I don't think I would go that far. I don't think the rest of the world, whether you call it Russia or China or anywhere else, you find Indian origin people succeeding at that highest levels. Okay,
That's true. That's true.
so
That's very, very
that
well put.
aspect, people to people ties, people have families, you have families, I have families on both sides. The people to people ties are very strong. We, while discussing high politics, we don't discuss low politics. We, these are low politics to lay out some of the foundations for this kind of a stronger relationship. I think what you would do is, how do you calibrate? And our colleague Ajay put that point brilliantly, saying that yes, you can explore new markets, but getting into a supply chain, a robust, secure supply, mature supply chain. You need a customer. For an Indian exporter, he needs a customer who pays him at the end of the day. His goods are being paid and compensated, and he gets what he does. So to establish these things take a lot of time. So they would be reevaluating, recalibrating, and there will be a lot of rhetoric and everything. We won't budge and everything, but negotiations are always carried behind closed doors. The deals are cut behind closed door. You give this to you get that. You find a way to mollify the big man in the White House, and you just try to see what you can come out of it. And everybody, I think everybody around the world is praying, how do we navigate these 4 years? If there is
Yes.
one prayer that's said in many temples today across India, that many businessmen, they would be just like, "Ye 4 saal nikal do, fir baad mein dekh le."
That's true. That's true. Raghutam, if you'd like to come in, I mean,
Yes, I wanted to come in.
I actually wanted to also bring up the fact that Trump may have stymied, the India. He must have got very upset the fact that Pakistan pandered so beautifully to Trump about the bringing peace between India and Pakistan, and India didn't. India continued to insist that Trump had no role to play.
Wait until the
So.
wait until the Pakistanis pull the knives out from their back.
But yes, we don't. Yes, that will happen. That
if
will
if
happen. No,
if if
but Raghotam,
yeah.
my question basically is: do you think Trump is really trying to promote Pakistan and to teach a lesson to India on this?
No, I don't think so, and I don't think we should be too worried about the U.S. Pakistan relationship. If at this point of time, Mr. Trump wants to impose just a 19% tariff on Pakistan for its biggest export, which is terrorism, instead of technology from India, well, let's just let him have it, right? So that's fine. But Pakistan is a different ballgame. Actually, I think we have been reading it wrong. The lunch with Asim Munir and a whole lot of other things that have happened. The exploration of oil in Balochistan. I think we've been reading it wrong. I
No,
think
they will never be able to explore oil
there
because
is
already the Baloch Liberation Army is creating havoc for the Chinese who are
right.
there.
The reason the Americans want to be in Balochistan is because it has a checkmate to China.
And
Both,
also to keep an eye on Iran.
yeah. So Iran is a ally of China again, right? And you have minerals in Balochistan, in Afghanistan, on which China right now has quite a hold, which the Americans also want to be able to grab, right? So that conversation is a very different conversation. I think
That's true. That's true.
inviting the army chief to Pakistani army chief to have lunch with him. We feel very bad about something if something good happens to Pakistan, just as Pakistan seems to feel very bad if something good happens to us. But I think we are reading it differently from what the Americans actually want. You remember Richard Armitage bench pressing Musharraf, right, in 2001, 2000. So we need to remember the kind of relationship that the US has with Pakistan. It is something the Pakistanis are always ready to bend, ready to please. We are not, right? That's the whole difference. And they have a good geography there.
Yes,
the piece of
that-
Balochistan. That has been our bugbear for a very long time, since partition. So that's that's a different order of things. But I just wanted to make some remarks on what the other speakers said.
I just want to
Um,
say that I've only got concluding remarks for everybody, so please.
Sure. No, I just wanted to say, you can always rearrange trade. There is nothing that India says to America that can't be sold elsewhere. In fact, even in within India, right? When the Americans did not want Alfonso mangoes, we started eating Alfonso mangoes. Otherwise, most Indians couldn't afford Alfonso mangoes at that point of time, right? So it became affordable over a period of time, and we consume it today instead of sending it to them in exchange for Harley Davidsons. So, trade can always be rearranged. Most of it can be rearranged. There are a couple of things. The GPUs from America cannot be rearranged. You can only get it from America. So that is our dependence, right? For AI, for computing, for our data centers when we want to do a big AI splash, right? The rare earths from China cannot be rearranged at this point of time, right? That's why Trump had to bend. Trump had to he tried the 145% tariffs on China. China hit back with restrictions on rare earth supplies. That hits not just the American auto industry, it hits even the American defense industry. The F-35s have rare earths in them. The American missiles have rare earths in them. The American submarines have rare earths in them. All of them will come to a standstill if China doesn't supply it, because it will take at least another 10 to 15 years for America to build up a supply chain of rare earths. So Mr. Trump had to bend. China had this leverage. Mr. Trump had to bend, and not just bend on the tariffs. He also had to give in on supplying advanced GPUs to China, which he wanted to stop. Right. So that's the kind of leverage they have. We don't have that kind of leverage, unfortunately. So whatever needs to be arranged can be rearranged, but the point of doing this deal, the point of running to Washington in February was not to, keep the status quo of $100 billion trade, $150 billion trade. It was to get out to $500 billion, right?
That's
That was the
right.
point. That was the point. And the strategic reason behind it is that since the end of the Second World War, America's strategic allies have also been its closest trade partners. If you are not a close trade partner, you cannot be a strategic partner. That is the logic of this whole thing. And this has been the logic that we have been working on for the last 25 years to get closer to America, right? You can always say, okay, you can always threaten them with, I'll go to the RIC club. But what will you get there? We are facing
That's
today.
true.
We are facing today problems with magnet supplies from China. They're taking back their engineers from the Foxconn facilities.
That's right.
They've restricted supplies of rare earths, and this is not even the superpower today, right? Well, imagine what happens when China becomes the superpower and can do exactly what America does today. In terms of sanctions, in terms of restrictions, in terms of blackmail, in terms of saying, if you don't do what I do, you're not in my camp. So
Very, very good points. Very good points.
So we are stuck between a couple of things, right? One is the U.S. Current U.S. administration and the and China. Now you have to sort of make up with one of them. What is your choice, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you get crushed from both sides.
Yeah.
The Americans won't give you GPUs. The Chinese won't give you rare earths. Where are you left at that point of time? So, I mean, that's just an example that I was citing. So you need to get in somewhere on one of the sites
Correct.
to whatever extent that you can. So which one do you choose? Mr. Trump will be gone in 3 years' time, and the next administration might be very different from this administration, unless JD Vance becomes the president at that point of time, right? So, but the Chinese thing won't ever change. It has not changed in the last 70 years. The Chinese view of India and its place in the hierarchy that China imagines, that has not changed, and that is not going to change for a long time. You have a chance of things changing in the US. You don't have a chance of anything changing
right.
with respect to China. So where do you go? So that's where we are at this point of time.
No, that's very interesting. Very well put, Raghotham. Mr. Srivastava, if you can just give us concluding remarks. I mean, India has been calling itself the third largest economy, the fastest growing economy, but really we're trailing very far behind. We don't have a Henry Kissinger to see to it that we can get built up like America did build up the Chinese. So what can we do for this economic transformation that is needed to push India into the big leagues?
This shock tells us that it's the time for internal renewal, serious internal renewal. We talk in very flowery language about our achievements, but we always we never almost discuss the real problems. So it's the time to list those problems, 100, 200 problems, and take care of them one by one. Second is it's a stupid trade war, not a physical bombing. Will be okay.
Yeah, no, please. I didn't hear the end of your sentence.
I say it's a stupid trade war, not a physical bombing of a nation. Will be all right.
All right. Yes, let's hope you're right. Mr. Bharat Gopalaswamy, you want to make a concluding remark?
Again, summarizing all this point and my colleague's point, I keep saying this: the Americans don't remember anything. The rest of the world doesn't forget anything. Okay.
Great.
1970s, you were a pariah. India was a pariah state. 1991 sanctions, 1998 nuclear bomb sanctions, and 2000. Lo behold, 2005, you have the biggest foreign policy achievement of the century, which is the U.S.-India civilian nuclear deal.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. So, I mean, the American government, like you said, all these people, there is a very good chance that all these people sitting in the White House will disappear 4 years from now. You will have no trace of them that they ever worked in the White House. Can you recall who worked in the Obama White House as a senior director for South Asia? Can you recall? You may be able to recall that in the Indian establishment. You cannot recall any of these people who worked as a senior director. Okay, so again, so like he said, it's a simple trade war. What happens today and how Trump makes decisions is anybody's guess, including his own guess. He may even not know how he makes his own decisions. So I think this too shall pass. And again, there will be a recalibration because there is a shock. The rest of the world, obviously, they would want to, there is a reliably unreliable government is what the American government is. Okay.
It's very well put. Raghotham, do you have a final comment?
Yeah.
Okay, so
One line.
okay, if it is just one line, I would say Prime Minister Modi must pick up the phone, call Mr. Trump, and work his charm on him.
Whoa,
That's the level at which this can
Oh
be
my
sorted
God!
out.
Can I say something?
Yes,
Of course, one thing needs to be done. Mr. Trump needs to be told, you can't, do this in public. We need to talk in private. So that's a precondition that you must lay out and sort it out in private. It can be sorted out only at that level at this point of time.
Mr.
Given that it is
Srivastava?
not just about trade, but about much
Yeah.
more than trade.
Yes.
More the
Mr.
respect.
Srivastava?
I said Neena.
Huh? Yes.
Respect. Exactly.
It's a respect issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I was. What happened in Vietnam and Indonesia is that negotiating team agreed to Trump's say level of concessions at A. Then Trump picked up the phone and he spoke to the Secretary General in Vietnam, Prime Minister of Indonesia, and he announced a trade deal with negotiators say A plus 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 plus. I don't want that to happen with India, and it's a great decision if it has been taken by Prime Minister Modi not to pick up a call and call Trump.
Wow.
These are tasks
So
best handled by negotiators. Prime Minister, of course, whatever he feels will be done by the negotiators.
Oh, sorry. I was not talking about just the trade deal. I was talking about all the other things that have come up. The Russian oil business that has come up, that can only be sorted out at the prime minister's
personal
level. That's what I meant. The
Sure,
trade
sure,
negotiations
sure.
will still happen. The trade negotiations will still
Yes.
happen, right? The negotiators are coming. It will be 25th. So that process will go on. It is this other thing that Mr. Trump has brought up that is the issue at this point of time.
It's like Modi
Well,
can say, "I can't do for you, man. Why are you getting me out of my office?"
Anyway, jokes apart, I think the fact is that we have to still figure out whether what Trump said on his Truth Social platform, saying India is no longer a friend, is true or not. Because and the disruption that he's caused in over 90 countries is is equally looks like an economic reordering of the world's economy, Trump style. So we really don't know what's going to happen. Do we have to stand our ground? Do we compromise? We'll only figure all this out, I think, in the next couple of weeks when the meetings happen on August 25th. India has much to work on. Thank you, Mr. Ajay Srivastava, for all your inputs. Thank you, Mr. Bharat Gopalaswamy. And thank you, Raghotham, for your insights. Thank you, viewers. Do click on the New Indian Express website and subscribe to Global Express.